What if I told you you could make the world a better place by playing Dungeons and Dragons? How does that make you feel?
Well,
Makes me
of
feel
course.
good. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your guest, Dale.
And I'm your co-host, Ian. We hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure.
I am super excited. Dale, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm really happy to be here. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
I'm a big fan of your product. One thing that I really believe is that Dungeons and Dragons is a game, and tabletop in general is a game that's designed for everyone. And I know that it's not always accessible to everyone, and it doesn't always reflect the variety of backgrounds that everyone comes from in the challenges and trials and stuff that is part of uh, our lives. And I think that what you've put together here with Limitless Heroics is phenomenal. So, Dale, we obviously got a nice sample of your content. Before we delve in that, can you tell Crit Nation and all of our wonderful audience a little bit about yourself and Wormworks Publishing?
Sure. So Wormworks Publishing is dedicated to helping you make other people's lives better. Right? We want you to be able to be the hero. We want to give you the resources to use tabletop role-playing games in such a way that you actually make the real world a better place. And so right now, our big project is Limitless Heroics, and what it is it's a compendium of literally every disability, neurodiversity, and mental health symptom in existence, plus a bunch of fantasy ones, because if you're playing D&D, there's going to be other things in a magical world that wouldn't happen in the real world. And so the idea is that you can either replicate real world diagnoses or conditions or whatever term you want to use, or you can have something all new, and you can either use that for player characters or for NPCs. And so it's also a tool. A lot of people think, well, I'm not sure that I'd want to play that a character like that, right? But this is also a dungeon master tool to just populate your world. If you think about how the real world, about 15-20%, depending where you are, of the population is disabled. All right. And so when you're creating a fantasy world, you tend to start with the real world, and then you go, okay, what twist do I give it to make it fantasy? All right. And so then it becomes this question of why do you not have disabled characters? Why did so I mean, you're essentially removing them, and oftentimes it's not a conscious decision.
Right.
It's how D&D was kind of designed with that. It's not built into rules as written. And so we want to just make it easy for people to take that and include that in their game, to make it more like the real world, and also so that you can just by using the write-ups, the mechanics in there, or even if you don't use the mechanics, just like for an NPC that maybe the mechanics don't specifically apply, but you just give them you communicate that disabled people exist, and they exist in my world too.
And I think that that's a really great point, because I have never, honestly, in a world with adventurers, I had never thought to include people who are already have some sort of disability. And that you're right, that's not something that I consciously avoided, which honestly, if anything, it would make sense that I should have, a few people with, missing limbs, for instance, because, it's such a dangerous world. But to even have, people that were, born a certain way, and to not include that, I realize how much personality that the world should have that I've been kind of omitting and not intentionally.
Right.
And so when I saw this product, I was very kind of knocked on my ass, because I was like, holy crap. Not only is, as you mentioned, this a great resource for players who want to give more personality to their characters, but also as a DM, it makes it easier to include others and flesh out the world in a more real way, I think, especially in a fantasy setting. Even, one of the things I was reading in some forums about stuff like this was, well, there's abilities and stuff that get over them. I was like, yes, but most people don't have access to that, and it's costly, and a myriad of other reasons why they don't have access to it. And you would just be marginalizing that if you just went ahead and just made it disappear like that. Obviously, player characters are typically a very rare breed among the world's population. And so for me, this really gives me a great tool to not only make my player characters more interesting, but to show that the world is truly reflective of the world that we experience ourselves, and that sometimes people are born with disabilities, but that doesn't stop them from being heroic or still becoming important people in our worlds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and that's something that I can't emphasize enough, because it's something that I didn't really think about before either.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I mean, so much of my life, I have children who are neurodiverse. I have worked in various disability fields since middle school. All right. And so it wasn't really something that I had thought about before either, until I think really it was seeing things like the combat wheelchair, seeing the controversy with Jen Kretschmer's adventure in Candlekeep and stuff like that, and I went, oh yeah, and it was just something that I hadn't really thought about, and I thought, wow, why did I not think of that before? And really, that's kind of how this started. That I said, oh, well, there needs to be more of that. And at first, I started looking for assistive devices and prosthetics and all that kind of stuff. And there was a little bit out there. Like there's the combat wheelchair, and if you went on like DM's Guild or just kind of did a little googling, there was a little bit out there, but not very much.
Right.
And so then I went, okay, well, I'll create a book of prosthetics and different assistive devices. And then I went, wait a minute, this is a solution without a problem, because if you don't have people with disabilities in the first place, then they don't need assistive devices.
Right.
And then, wait a minute, why are there no people with disabilities?
and when I was reading through this, and I'm sure Ian can think of far more examples than I can, but I'm a big comic book person, and as I was thinking back, some of my most memorable characters have a form of disability. Okay, so some of my favorite characters might be villains in some cases, like Modak, but he's got he's got the small body with the big brain, and to me that shows that whoever designed that character might have been considering that stuff, where he needs this. He makes up for his lack of physical abilities with his mental prowess, and I think that makes that a far more interesting character than just somebody like crap, who's the Hulk's genius enemy dude? I can't remember
The
his
leader.
name. Yes, the leader. Thank you. Oh, how did I forget? How did I forget that? But he's a good example. I mean, they're basically comparable as far as being super smart, but one just has better development because of the challenges that Modak had to overcome. Of course, he's also trying to destroy everything, but that's no here nor there. Not related.
Also going on a test too, but hey.
So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff in here. I don't know if do you have anything to add, Ian?
Not in particular.
Okay.
I do think it's an interesting topic to touch on, and it's definitely a discussion worth having with some tables for sure.
Yeah. Now the sample that or that I have, I don't know, I don't remember if you sent it or if I got it from your website or the guild. I don't remember where, but the mechanics and stuff that you included in here are actually it's a wide variety, and most of them are left open to how you utilize them as a player. Like when you talk about, you break it down by like different body parts and stuff, for instance, like
Huh.
something as simple as appendages or your face. Each one has these different uh options, and you, like the face, for instance, one of the options you can roll on is a tumor. Well, that gives you a lot to think about when you're developing a character. Well, where is the tumor on the face? What does it look like? How does it make that person's life more difficult? As I was thinking about these things, the more I was able to develop an interesting character who has to then overcome those challenges. One first thing that came to my mind with the face and tumor is one having a tumor that's so big that interrupts his ability to speak, but also this person wants to be a wizard, and so I was thinking that finding ways to overcome that would be really cool. First thing I thought of is using Mage Hand to hold it out of the way when he wants to cast spells or something like that. I don't know if that was the intent you were going for with this sort of product.
Yeah, so we um, wanted to kind of replicate the experience. All right, to give
Hmm.
now obviously, someone who is playing a disabled character in a game, or encounters a character, it's not the same as, because you can turn it off. You end the
Yeah.
game, and and it's done, and
Right.
you're only sort of playing the part. But at the same time, you are going to run into challenges, and in fact, the book has an appendix on how to, and it's also worked into some of the descriptions. Okay, so if you have problems speaking, right, and
Hmm.
you have verbal components, what do you do about that? All
Hmm.
right. And
Hmm.
so there's how to modify spells and things, and what the extra cost and things like that is necessary
Right.
to make that happen. And so all of that kind of mechanics, if you're paralyzed and you want to cast a spell that has somatic components, same thing. And so work that in while still keeping game balance, and not just sort of hand waving it, so to speak.
Right. Right.
And um and so, because, and the other thing is with the prosthetics that are in there, um real world assisted devices are, they're they tend to have a trade-off, right? And so like a prosthetic arm is oftentimes, you can get your sort of cosmetic ones, or kind of very basic ones that um, don't do a whole lot. You can get, I mean, in our modern world, you can get these sort of robotic arms that can grip things and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Those things are really expensive, and they're really heavy. And I've talked to people that said, yeah, I had one of those. I don't use it anymore. It was more trouble than it was worth. And you get chafing and just all kinds of issues with it. And so we wanted to communicate through the various assistive devices that we had, that that all these things that we have in the real world, they've got drawbacks.
Hmm.
And so it's always kind of a trade-off, and so we work that into the mechanics. So there might be a potion that's basically, I mean, some of them, if you read the descriptions carefully, like, oh, that's a bottle of Tylenol, you know. And so I did some stuff like that, like chronic pain or something like that,
Hmm.
so it's like, well, some of it, like, oh, it's great until it wears off. And and how common are potions. It's not like you can keep a bottle of 200 of them with you. um
Right. Right.
and or like, okay, well, this spell, if you have a phobia, you can use a heroic spell, and that'll take care of that phobia for the duration. And you had to use a spell slot in order to do that, and now you
To
don't have that
offset it.
spell
Yeah.
slot for something else. So yeah, there's always some kind of trade-off, just like in real life. And so we wanted to kind of help people recognize that you can't just it doesn't just suddenly make things all gone. It's not like, I think the classic example is Daredevil.
Hmm.
um that, like, okay, so Daredevil, oh, he's blind, but is he? I mean, let's face it, he can see better than anyone.
Right.
And
And I think that's something that we have to be mindful too, because that can, I don't know if the word I want to say is marginalize, or allow us to just wave away the fact that this is a problem if you've got it, and we don't want to do that. And I think that that is part of what makes this um, supplement interesting. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this supplement that I currently have is just like a draft concept. You are planning to launch a Kickstarter and add more stuff, more art. Is that accurate?
yeah. So the Kickstarter which launches January 4th, is going to have full write up of 450 plus symptoms, right?
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when I first started, working on this and trying to figure out how to categorize and group everything, I was first starting out with, like autism, okay, and everyone will say, you've heard this expression, autism's a spectrum,
Yeah.
right? So how do you do a write up on autism? And I looked around and I found some write ups, and basically, and they're good, and I really appreciate it, and I can't say enough positive about people that have said, hey, I want to include an autistic character in my game, and so therefore, I'm going to write up some mechanics to do it, right? But the problem is how do you do that when you consider what a spectrum autism is, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is one thing, and literally every disability is a spectrum. And so, okay, how do you do that? And so I realized as I was looking through and just researching that, for one, you have a lot of overlap. All right,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be amazed how many different conditions have chronic pain as a as part of that condition. And so I thought, well, there's no point in rewriting chronic pain over and over and over. If
Right.
you break this down into symptoms, you can just sort of group things to whatever it is. And so because of that, and I just realized this about a week ago, you can literally represent the entire autism spectrum using the mechanics in this book.
That's awesome.
Because you've got all the different symptoms, plus it's broken down. You can, with each symptom, you can have different frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe it's in remission, and you never know when it's going to come back. All right. Maybe,
Hit you right in the middle of battle.
yeah, or maybe, maybe it's there and it kind of comes and goes and you never know when it's going to. Or you can even, there's even mechanics for something that is degenerative. And if you want to play it now, a lot of people, I mean, there's all kinds of disclaimers, built in there,
Right.
and stuff, that because a lot of people are not going to want to play a character.
A weaker, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, well, their days are numbered, but some people do want to play that character. Right.
Right.
And so it's in there, but with everything, every single table says you can choose or roll on this table. And because we don't want anyone to feel like they're kind of forced into playing this character that they don't want, or or something
Right.
like that.
Delcinia says, I have a player who plays a character with depression solely because she wanted to see a character with her disability fight dragons and win. That, I feel like, is one of the cores of this, is it can make it relatable for people who don't get represented in regular pop culture type scenarios. Daredevil, you mentioned as an example, is one of the few blind heroes, but is he really, as you had said? And
Well-
that's go ahead.
Well, I did want to shout out, I mentioned it earlier with comic book characters in general, because something that most people don't realize is in the comics, Hawkeye is actually deaf. And you never really saw that in the Marvel movies until the Hawkeye series, where they finally admit, yeah, with all the explosives he's been around, his hearing's been damaged, he's walking around with hearing aids. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
And it comes into play several times.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I actually remember one time at Gen Con too, where we were playing Mutants and Masterminds, I was actually running Hawkeye as a playable character, and I actually did, and there actually was one point where his disability actually came up in combat, where I was fighting Black Canary, and she did a sonic scream at me. I'm like, Okay, DM, quick question. I want to find this attribute for this character. Does that affect me? I'm cool either way. Goes, oh, yep, you're deaf. You're good.
See, I like that as a benefit of the disability you had given your character.
Okay.
Right.
And actually, remember in the movie Ninja Scroll, one of the, and I know this is a trip that you mentioned in your book because it's a villain, mind you, that you're trying to avoid. But one of the villains they fought was a blind samurai, but he
Mhm.
used that to his advantage by creating an environment with flashes, which disables his opponent, but does not affect him at all.
Yeah,
Like
and
that.
and there's nothing wrong with having a villain with a disability. All right.
Right.
But if they're the only character in the whole story with a disability, or if
That's a
their
problem.
disability is is their defining feature.
Mhm.
You know, I was thinking of Darth Vader. You know, it's like oh that's scary. It's a respirator. There's nothing scary about a respirator, people. All right. But the way that it's worked into his character, it becomes this scary, ominous thing. Well, now how do people that are actually on respirators or even need any kind of breathing equipment? How does that make them feel then when
Yeah.
when that's treated as this sort of monstrous thing?
That's exactly, as somebody who doesn't have, that's not something I had ever considered. And now when you're right, when you make that a defining feature, that can definitely put some strain on um the person that who I actually have to deal with something like that on a regular basis.
Yeah,
Um
or if it's especially if it's their disability is the reason that they're a villain. Like, oh, this thing happened to me and now I'm disabled and therefore my life is terrible and I need revenge.
yeah, that's definitely something to avoid.
Yep. And
Um
another piece of media I thought about too as we're having this discussion is, have any of you watched or read the manga Basilisk?
no,
All
I
right.
have not.
Short version, general plot. Two clans had to resolve a conflict by having a 10 on 10 death match. Yeah, really. And
Sounds horrible.
it is. But and quite a few of the characters do have like physical disabilities in there too, but that's also a result of inbreeding, so they can focus on specific techniques. And one
Mm,
example is there's one character who you thought for most of the series he was blind, but you actually find out later on, oh, he's not blind. He actually has an eye technique. When he opens his eyes, anybody who sees his eyes then commits suicide, but he can't turn it off, which is why he always keeps his eyes shut.
interesting.
Yeah.
So that defect can be a strength.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
there's
can also, like Midas, touch something and turn it to gold.
Yeah.
It seems like it's horrible or great at first, but becomes horrible. In this case, it's the other way around, taking
Yeah.
this thing that's bad and trying to find a way to use it in a way that's beneficial.
Yep.
I can give more examples, but that's the one that immediately comes to mind in particular. So,
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Dale.
so the different symptoms, some of them do have bonuses.
Mhm.
If you're blind, then gaze attacks, yeah, you're not going to worry about that.
Right.
Um, and different things like that that are worked in to it, and but not everything does.
Right.
And I also made a point of differentiating between thunder damage and sound,
Mhm.
Mhm.
because thunder damage is vibrations. Um,
Right.
and
Which is why
so
I asked about the ruling about the Sonic Scream earlier from like Black Canary. So,
yeah, so thankfully, fifth edition is really specific about what kinds of damages, classifications. Makes it real easy to rule on how some of that stuff works.
but well, I
Right.
also think like Fifth Edition 2 was trying to reduce the amount of categories in general, just to reduce the paperwork, if you will, in general for everyone. But
So we are running
and
low on main on our up on our time. You have another thing to add?
yeah, and what would you say, like, with this document that you've, with the research and your publication, what you have so far with it? What are the real benefits you've seen, or you feel that can come from this product?
See, I think number one, for one, we already had that comment
Right.
about being able to play yourself, right? And
Mhm.
I've had so many people where I see somebody talking about ADHD on Twitter, and I send them the write up that I have on attention deficit, which, by the way, again, there's lots of different kinds or expressions of ADHD, and so so you can have that kind of, that exact reflection of your experience. But oftentimes I've just sent the one piece, the one attention deficit piece to people, and they've said, wow, yeah, that's me right there, and people that have just repeatedly, or the depression, anxiety, that I show them what I have on that, and they go, this is what goes through my head every morning. This is my day. And so people feel seen and heard, and recognized, and but also we want people who don't have the benefit of having a lot of disabled people in their lives, right? And so they haven't had that exposure. And I know when I first, I mentioned I was way back in middle school that I first had this experience, and like I was kind of scared at first, and then once I actually had the experience, I was working with people and with developmental disability and stuff, and I went, oh, this isn't scary. This isn't scary at all, and this is great, and I really enjoyed it, and so part of this is to give people that sort of role play exposure to learn, number one, that that disabled and or neurodivergent or mentally ill. I mean, mental illness has such a stigma. To go, no, this is not scary. This is not, it's just part of life. And and so once they experience that, then when they encounter people in real life, then it's like, oh, I'm used to this. And
I definitely feel like that is one of the big things that people do that they don't realize when they're not used to seeing somebody who has a disability or different. It tends to make them uncomfortable, not out of they've been taught that, but just out of generally ignorance, right? And having more things like this can make that so it's less uncomfortable for anybody to be in that situation who's not been around it and doesn't know how to react. Because most people, and this is just Justin's opinion, when they get uncomfortable or they look or stare, I don't think it's usually malicious or anything, or something out of anger or something like that. It's just out of, I've never been in this situation and it's making me uncomfortable. And while I don't think that they're trying to be mean or rude about it, that's the unfortunate world we live in. So having more things like this that opens that up and making that the norm, that hey, you know what, this is a part of life, there's people that have to deal with this, it makes it so that it doesn't become that look and point type of situation. At least that's just Justin's opinion.
Yep.
So,
and I wouldn't mind reading this the product a little bit more in depth, just because I know I may have touched on this in the past, but I'm actually on the spectrum myself. Like years ago, when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I don't think a lot of people realize like how wide of us, like you said, autism is a spectrum. There's so many things that fall under the qualifications that there's not really a one size fits all diagnosis, if you will. So.
And I think so far, Dale, you've done a wonderful job including this. And as I was thinking about this, the other thing that I there's always been a fight about natural ones in D&D, about the fighter completely whiffing it or something. And as I'm looking at this, we talked about how things could be unexpected. I think having some sort of disability as that's intermittent could really fill that narrative where, well, why did I get 2 ones in a row and miss? Maybe I fell asleep, or I had a short tremor or a seizure, or I lost my vision, or whatever disability they have. There's actually a part of the game that can explain that, I think, or at least include it. So is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we move on to the next segment of the show?
Nah, stuff might come up later, but it's fine.
Okay.
Oh, I'll mention one more.
Okay.
We kind of let's touch on this. One of the other sections in the sort of introduction part of the book, there's always that question comes up about like, what about greater restoration?
Mhm.
And you kind of already mentioned that about, not everybody has access to that. It's
Right.
expensive or whatever. All right. But the other thing is that restoration can only restore that which is taken away, essentially. All right.
Ah, I see.
So if you're born with, like I had a guy on my show, he doesn't have forearm. His hand is attached where his elbow would be. All right.
Okay.
He's not missing a forearm.
Nothing
He's,
to restore.
yeah, there's nothing to restore there. All right.
That's
It's
a
just who he
great
is.
way to look at it.
And so trying to put, especially on a congenital condition, you're born with that, and some kind of restoration, it would be like trying to restore a tail to an elf.
Yeah, you're basically trying to use, by saying Lester restoration will fix it, you're implying that they were born with a problem when they were born how they were born, and that's the way it is, and there's nothing to fix.
Right.
And I think that is the right approach. Well done. So, I'm really excited for this. I can promise you have a backer right here, and I will shout it from the top of the channels and stuff when it goes live to help push this through, because I think this is something the world needs, and I hope that it just blows up. Okay, maybe a poor choice of words, but you know what I mean.
Nope. Appreciate
All
it.
right. So I think that'll do it for our main topic, the Limitless Heroics. I'm sure Alicia's been posting the links in the dibbly-doo somewhere. You can also head on over to critacademy.com and find this episode in the blog section and find links to all of the wonderful content that Dale has put out, and follow along with this journey of this project, because I'm sure it's going to get big. And I, for one, will start including these sorts of things in my D&D campaigns and settings. So I'm really excited for that. Now, the part where we have sold our souls to a random company.
Yep. Support for Crit Academy is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Go to manscaped.com and use code CRIT for 20% off plus free shipping.
Yes, Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th generation trimmer features cutting-edge ceramic blades to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. I now feel confident in shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn your 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed to get a more precise shave in dark areas. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths with sizes from 1 to 4. Maybe you got to find the perfect happy medium. Not everyone likes their lawn the same size, right?
Nope.
Did I mention it's wireless charging? If you haven't seen Brandon's unboxing video, it was so funny watching him try to figure out how it works. The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. And let's not be honest, boys, we like stuff that lasts longer, right? Now, men, if you have been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong. That's gross. And no person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. It's time to get your own ball, hair, and body trimmer with Manscaped to make me time the best time and enhance your confidence with nice, smooth dice.
All right. Every guy out there needs to add Manscaped to their wish list this season. It is the Christmas season after all. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CRIT, once again, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And once again, use the code CRIT.
Yes, please
CRIT, CRIT.
Please do. Shave that bag of holding, huh? The partner will love it. All right, and now on to our hunter tips and tricks.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, our Unearthed Tips and Tricks segment, where we bring you new and reusable material for both players and DMs.
Yep, that's right. We're now on our Unearthed Tips and Tricks section, and first on deck is our character concept. Shad, Farmer's Marketer. Description: Shad the Farmer's Marketer has made his name for himself among the local fruitmongers. His knowledge of the wheres and whats of all manner of fruits is legendary. In fact, Shad has written a book on fruit power. Yes, this is Shad of Shadrick's Almanac of Fruit Far and Wide. Shad was invited to the Melon Monastery of Marvelous Monks to teach and learn how each fruit can enhance the natural universal key that powers the monk's great feats. A bite of banana fuels his fist of fury. A nibble of starfruit makes him dodge like a frisky feline. Some peaches, oh yes sir, they bring the speed to the wakapows. Personality-wise, okay, right, Shad knows his fruit, and is also so pompous and arrogant about it. Most don't need to know Alton's acidic levels of kiwi, and its effect on ki they don't have, but he insists on sharing his knowledge with the ignorant. Shad grew up in an apple orchard. When he was a little bitty, a magic fruit fell on his head, and they told him a sacred epic poem. He unbelievably remembered every word, but kept his knowledge secret. Since that fateful day, he has been the fruit master, perhaps the only fruit master in the world. And his motivation is to discover more exotic fruits and to discover how to use them to further enhance his ki. And this character concept comes from Beverage Tea, one of our viewers.
Dale, what do you think about this PC or NPC character? Melon Monastery of Marvelous Monks.
Tea is my superpower, so it's my source of my strength.
I love it.
This sorry, now I'm getting Popeye vibes.
Right.
Spinach and I was just telling my kids, what was that? I was picking up something heavy, and my kids are like 8, 9, 10, 11, and they're like, "How'd you do that?" Like, eat my vegetables.
Then you follow up with a breakdown of why all the different amino acids and stuff does the body good. This is one of the more interesting characters we've had on the show because there's so many different ways you can go with this as an NPC or as a PC. But I love you went on to the Popeye theme, because totally imagine him biting into a thing every time he goes to do his do a specific key power or something.
I'm also picturing, the monks, with the melons, just kind of going all Gallagher on them, and
I like the idea of reflavoring stuff, the little bullets from a sling as like slinging fruit. Don't forget to eat your fruit. All right, I think that'll do it for Shad's Farmer's Marketeer. Thank you, Beverage Tea, for the submission. If you like our On Our Tips and you would like to have your stuff featured on our show, please head on over and email us at critacademy@gmail.com with the Unearthed Tips and Tricks in the subject line, and follow the format that all of our UTTs follow. You can check it out on the blog. Got a couple messages about how people would like to see more submitted stuff. So if you've got some good ideas, send them to us. All right. Our monster variant of the show today is the Huntsman. What? Oh, it's the dog. It's like, it's the dog. So in order to build our monster variants, if you don't know, we always start with a stat block, because while it's amazing to be able to just say that you can build a perfectly balanced character, sometimes it's easier just to start with framework that already exists and then go from there. So
Yep.
for our huntsman, we're going to start with the Drider. We're going to lose some features and change some features. The size becomes medium. Any humanoid race becomes acceptable. Any alignment, it's going to lose Fey Ancestry. We're going to give it a new spell list. It's going to lose Spider Climb, Sunlight Sensitivity, Web Walker, and Bite. Now, for the new spell list, we're going to keep it simple for the huntsman theme. We're going to give him at will alarm, because, you know, setting a trip alarm is just something a huntsman should do. And then twice a day, good berry and ensnaring strike. And I actually did add snare to the list after the fact, but I realized I didn't actually add it here, so let's add that. So with that, we're going to give it some new actions. The hunting trap that it can use 3 times a day. The huntsman can use an action to set up a trap with a sawtooth steel ring that snaps shut on a creature steps on the plate in the center. It is affixed to a chain. It is essentially the hunter's trap. Imagine that. The trap could be spotted with a DC 15. A creature that steps on the plate must succeed a DC 15 saving throw or take 44 piercing damage and stop moving. Thereafter, until the creature breaks free, it is basically stuck there on a short leash that it can't move its 5-foot square. A creature that can use its action, I realize I spelled that wrong, can use its action to make a DC 15 strength or thieves tools check to break it free or disable it entirely. On a failed check, you take 1d4 damage is done to the trapped creature. So we basically have an action to set traps. Now, because you can do it 3 a day, it lasts as long. So I love this monster for being able to set it up to catch my players on guard. Has that ever happened to you? Love it. The next feature we're going to give it is the shrapnel trap. So why just hang around with just the hunting trap when we can do better? This one can also be done 3 times a day. The huntsman can use an action to set up a trap that bursts with caltraps or ball bearings when somebody steps on the pressure plate with the same DC as the hunting trap. A creature takes 2d10 piercing damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful one. Additionally, the area becomes covered in either shrapnel of the huntsman's that the huntsman chose. In this case, with ball bearings, you must succeed on a DC 10 dexterity or a DC 15 dexterity saving throw when you enter the area if you're not moving half your speed. Or if you do caltraps, you must succeed a DC 15 saving throw or stop moving and take 1 piercing damage. Whew. Okay, one more thing. As a reaction, it gets tactical retreat. When the huntsman hits hit points lower than half its maximum, it can use its reaction to move up to half of its speed without provoking an op attack. As part of the action, it may drop a bag of ball bearings or caltraps before or during its movement. That's a lot. Yep. Obviously, I was designing a new class recently, and so this came up. I would love to hear Dale. I'd love to hear Dale's thoughts on this.
So the shrapnel trap, to me, that sounds like when you trip and your dice bag rips open.
Yes, and it goes everywhere. I love it. That's perfect.
Yeah, I've never seen mechanics for what's essentially like a bear trap kind of thing before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome, and how useful, and of course something like that would exist, in a D&D setting.
Yeah, this is one of the fun things that I enjoyed about this is that it. So for those that don't know, every month I design a flavor of the month where I completely reflavor something. Well, I just did Craven the Hunter for our patrons. So having an NPC who tracks and stalks the players, then sets up traps and then engages them as they're caught in them, totally taking them by surprise, just needed to be fleshed out as a monster. And I feel like this really captured that essence. I always say that I think monsters need a reaction or legendary actions. So we give this one that lets them get away without being stabbed as much. So the snare and the alarm and all that stuff is on top of that. Ian, what do you think?
I definitely think there's a tactical nature to this creature. And obviously it's a creature that needs to be familiar with its environment because it needs to set these traps up ahead of time, because setting down traps in the middle of a fight is not practical in most cases.
Don't step there. In his defense, if they start littering the battlefield though, and then he doesn't have any push attacks. Huh, I should have thought about that.
Although one thing that could be kind of fun to do though is, although suppose all these are actions though and don't take a minute to set up too.
Delcinia says, I blacked out due to pun damage. What I missed. That's funny. Yeah, so this is definitely something that's a little more unique. I'm always working on new fun stuff, and I think the Huntsman came out pretty well. For those that are asking, part of our extraordinary expeditions was our first what's the thing beyond the goal? Stretch goal was to create 4 new classes, and I designed a trapper / huntsman ranger archetype. So I'm excited to share that with everybody. All right, that'll do it for our very long-winded huntsman monster variant. Dale, would you
slides can confirm?
Whatever. Dale, would you like to tell us about our encounter? You can either read it or just summarize it. That's entirely up to you.
Sure. Well, I'll just read it then, so I don't do this wrong. All right. Sage Wardens, a collection of druids, have recently had the area surrounding their verbena grove vandalized by a dwarven settlement. The Wise One, a female elf druid named Lothalai, has attempted to speak with the settlers about moving their settlement to a new location away from the grove. But the dwarves are stubborn and insist the area has a high concentration of valuable mining deposits. Odag Diamondpick, a male dwarf veteran, leads the group of 50 miners. He is pig-headed and refuses to miss out such a great find. Odag has hired an adventuring party to ward off any attempts by the druids or Lothalai to block their mining operation. Lothalai seeks any who can destroy the mining machines and the mines and scare off Odag and his crew until they are leagues away from the beautiful Purple Grove.
What do you think about this encounter, Dale?
I don't know. It sounds familiar. Like it's got a little bit of a Spider-Man Homecoming vibe.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I went to my head was Princess Mononoke.
Princess Mononoke was the inspiration, but I can totally see the Spider-Man No Way Home,
like the Iron Town and the Forest Gods.
Homecoming, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you see this a lot, or Fern Gully, or this is a great and it's great because you can have nice thing about an encounter like this is and I love doing this where you have the different sort of two sides, and the players, maybe you get hired by one side, and but then you go, are we on the right side or not? And maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Oftentimes in those "are we the bad guy" situations, you realize, oh yeah, we are, but maybe you're not. And so and in this one, it's a little bit ambiguous. And it depends on where you come down on, as far as development versus strip mining, or and
right.
And how do you feel about that?
And sometimes in some situations, there is no right answer. Like there's sometimes some groups who do come into conflict for completely, for like a better phrase, natural reasons, if you will, or so forth. So,
yeah. I like this because that it leaves, as with most of my encounters, it leaves a little bit of moral ambiguity up to it, because it doesn't really say exactly what they're mining. It doesn't say, as Dale point, the approach that they're using. It could be that the druids, they're actually a pretty good distance away, and the druids are the old "get off my lawn,"
Yeah.
So,
because
a lot of fun.
I know in our Friday game we touched on this a little bit when we interacted with the Druid Guild, whose goal was to restore nature to the world. And even we were like, okay, you're being very vague about your methods. Are you talking about like regrowing nature in like select pockets, or are you talking about complete genocide and destroying the city and letting nature take over afterwards? There's kind of
that's a need to know basis, is what that is. All right, I think that'll do it for our encounter. Assist the Sage Wardens. Ian, would you like to tell us about our magic item, which comes right from Wormworks, which is Dale? If I recall, is this part of the Limitless Heroics, or is it one of the other objects, or one of the other things from the website?
Yep, this is right out of the book.
Okay.
All right. Today, our magic item is the Braces of Blades. Wondrous common item. These silvered-legged braces function as a normal leg brace, but can extend and retract blades from the sides as a free action, allowing you to swing your legs as an attack while balancing on crutches, hands, or walking canes. The weapon does 1d6 plus strength modifier and slashing damage. Simple, but effective.
Who needs the lawnmower 4.0 when you got the braces of blades? I really like this. Dale, could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So the idea is that if you have a weakness in your legs, you need either your wheelchair user or you're using crutches or some other means. Then with these things that basically, if you just sort of imagine leg braces and with blades that sort of like daggers that stick out the feet when you you can just sort of use your crutches like a kind of like a little pole vault kind of thing, and swing your legs around. The legs don't need a lot of strength because you're using your body strength
Right.
to swing it around, and so you can still do slashing damage with that. And still make regular attacks using your legs,
What
and
came
while still bracing yourself.
what I thought of is those Olympians who stand on the rails and they swing like I don't know anybody's seen those where they're holding
Yeah.
themselves up and they're like that's the first thing I thought of, and I was like that would be such a fun like fighter archetype to play,
Not quite the
where
same
you have
thing,
to
but what came to mind for me was actually the character Gazelle from Kingsman, the first one.
Oh, yeah. Very similar.
Yeah.
It was so I really like this, and it really a lot. I think fighters and barbarians and some of the other more martial classes sometimes get a lot of flack, but something like this can make your character stand out. You could the challenges and the discomfort that comes with it could be something that could be a core of the character. They're complaining that I hate having to wear these things because they're uncomfortable and they hurt and they chafe and all these things, but at the same time they're probably they could be one of the most deadly characters in the group.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
or you could have just depending on what build you're using, you can
Mhm.
imagine a rogue that's using these things with a sneak attack, um, and or depending on your monk build. So yeah, there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I love it. All right, that'll do it for our magic item, the braces of blades from Wormworks. I keep getting tongue tied every time I try to say that. Our dungeon master tip is dangerous camping. As DMs, many of us tend to find random encounters a bit dull and unnecessary, but they can be powerful storytelling tools in Dungeons and Dragons games. You can make a character's appreciate hostels and inns far more by adding dangerous and threatening encounters while they sleep in the wilderness. This could be as simple as rolling a d20 on a 1 to 10, something negative happens. It could be something they find something missing, or they're attacked by a wild beast, or maybe it just rains on them and makes the next day's travel horrible. On 11 to 18, nothing happens. It's pretty standard stuff. And on a 19-20, something positive happens. What I can't imagine what positive would happen in the middle of the wilderness. But
You
if you
meet
guys
the
got
bird
any
from Resident
ideas,
Evil 4. There.
okay. The simple adjustment will constantly remind the players of the benefits of being in a tavern and an inn, and especially the benefits of getting a good night's rest. Because let's be honest, part of the wilderness is the danger. That's why most adventurers have things like, I'm going to sit up and watch, but what if the thing that's bad that happens watching doesn't do anything? You can't do anything with it, right? What if hang on a second here. Uh, oh. If it's something that is outside of just we're getting attacked, such as a horrible weather or I don't know, it just seems like that gets taken for granted sometimes, and during travel just gets the hand wave all the time. I'm not saying every encounter needs to be combat based, but if it starts hailing, you're not going to get a long rest. What do you guys think?
Yeah, my home group does a lot of travel in between locations, so I'm always trying to keep that interesting. And so most recently there was a thunderstorm, and which, like, how often does that actually happen in D&D?
Not
Just,
enough.
you know, and but you think, okay, there's got to be precipitation unless you're traveling in, in the desert, and so I actually, for each day they travel, I use a online weather generator to decide, okay, what's the weather like this day, and I keep track of the season and things like that too.
That's awesome.
So yeah, they just had a big thunderstorm and really heavy wind, and the squishy wizard, he basically, the wind was blowing enough that that he had to he was just knocked down and couldn't even get up. Um, the halfling almost went flying, and and stuff.
It's like
So
Wizard of Oz stuff right there. That sounds like a perfect opening to that new witches of the wild. What is it? Damn it, we just covered it. The wild. What?
oh, I'll be on the
Not
witch
you.
light.
Yeah, that's the one. Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Like, just, what happened to the halfling? I have no idea. Twister took
You guys didn't get any sleep last night. Why? Because the Aurora Borealis. This time of year, in this part of the country, in the middle of the woods, in our campsite.
That
Yes.
sounds odd. Turns out it was just the sorcerer casting spells and wild magic going loose. But anyways, this is something to make them appreciate that and going out of their way, because especially when you start making the cost obvious, like spending nights, especially when they want to stay at like a luxurious inn, it should be draining their resources. And it's easy to say, oh, I sleep in a tent. Okay, well, maybe, some rats get in there and start biting you up, But anyways, I think that'll do it for our Dungeon Master tip, dangerous camping. Our player tip of the podcast is don't be a dick. Nice try, Ian. And you can avoid dickitude by taking a moment to learn about it. Limitless Heroics. Dale, would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, when planning a character with specific symptoms to get the most benefit, learn more about those real world symptoms, or even if playing fantasy symptoms, the real world symptoms they're based on. So look them up and recognize medical websites, Wikipedia. Even better, find people for whom those symptoms are part of their life. Ask them about their experience. Note, this isn't always easy. It's part of life for a disabled person, is explaining their symptoms ad nauseum to medical professionals, family members, friends, coworkers, and many more. And it's exhausting, right? But there's online communities like Reddit's Our Disability or Our Disabled Dungeons. There's subreddits dedicated to specific disabilities. There's websites dedicated to specific disabled communities. We also have the show Gaining Advantage that can help you. We have players that come on and talk about their experiences, and in fact, if anyone who is disabled, neurodivergent, or mentally ill would like to come on our show, hit me up and we'll put you on there. And we talk about how that plays itself out in a game and things like that. So basically, learn. This is part of the process, and the better that you the better you understand, the better you're going to be able to play that character. The better you're going to be able to avoid harmful representations. And it's also helpful if maybe it's not your character, but it's another character in the party. All right. One of the things that a lot of disabled people run into is people that don't know how to help them and don't actually stop and ask.
Absolutely.
So I hear this over and over. Blind people who are out and about, and someone all of a sudden grabs their arm and helps them across the street. It's like, how do you think that I got this far
Here.
into town in the first place?
I'm blind, not helpless.
Yeah. So, if you see someone that looks like they might need some help, ask, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. And, but the same thing goes with in your D&D game, that, think about that, think about, from their perspective and things like that. And so, yeah, if you can find people. This is really great if you want to play a character that represents or has symptoms similar to a family member or a friend, someone you care about. Talk to them about it and say, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about that? And but also recognize that sometimes it's like, oh, I'm tired of explaining this.
Yep.
and that's okay, and so don't push it.
And something I did want to mention during the main topic, but we ran out of time, but I can easily tie into this tip, which, I mean, some of our topics, so it makes sense, is I think it's important for you to know your players, know your DM, know your table. Because obviously everybody is going to have different opinions, different views, different attitudes, and regardless of whether they're disabled or not. Like, I could easily, or if somebody has a disability, I could see if you ignore it to the point where it comes across as you're kind of, for lack of a phrase, being a dick or lacking empathy. But if you take it too far to the other extreme, where you kind of become over accommodating, if you will, you kind of become condescending. You need to find that point in the middle, and that's not going to be the same for everybody.
And I think people do that most of the time and don't realize it. So
Right, and
it's good to get input.
And I don't even think, even among the community of disabilities, as far as I can tell, not even they can agree with how you should treat everything. Like, I remember a post one time where somebody once dropped the joke about being bipolar. A second person jumped in and said, "I'm bipolar. Your statement offends me." Only for the person who made a joke in the first place said, "I'm also bipolar. Who are you to tell me I can't tell jokes about myself?"
Sure.
Yep. And I think that's
like
true.
I said,
of
there's not
most
really a one size fits all
situations.
answer. Hence why I went back to know your table, know your group.
Yep. And it's as simple as just asking too.
Yeah.
Hey,
and even something as simple as this was a big sort of controversy that I dealt with in writing this book. All right, are you disabled people or people with disabilities? And we call identity first language or person first language. All right, and different people have different preferences on that. And so in the book and in other places, I tend to kind of alternate. Like not precisely. Sometimes just one works better with the grammar of the sentence or something like that, But recognize that different people have different preferences on how their experience is described.
Right.
And so just be sensitive to that and recognize, just as everyone's experience is different, then how that works out, how they would like to be described, or how they'd like you to understand that is going to be different.
Yep.
Like going
perfect,
or like doubling down on the difference part, which I kind of touched on a moment too. Like, I think we can also agree with, as we establish how you should interact with some people. And once again, it's a different person. But I remember a friend of mine once made a post saying how you should treat somebody who's autistic and how you can accommodate them. I didn't comment, but as I said before, I am on the spectrum. And when I read the list, my first reaction was, I would be offended if somebody treated me that way with half of the stuff on here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's
so like I said, I know that they were well intentioned, but
right. So I think that'll do it for our player tip of the podcast.
Don't be
a dick. And you can avoid dickitude by learning a little bit about it, whatever it is. Limitless Heroics. I have absolutely loved this episode. Before we close out, every episode we give away fat loots to our audience. So today we are giving away the fighter archetype, the Skybreaker. If you don't know, of course you all know, I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson and Windrunners and Stormlight Archives and Skybreakers and all that. So it was only a matter of time before I took that inspiration and applied it into my D&D. So we have the Skybreakers, an order of knights who protect the skies from beasts above. Through powerful martial training and a touch of magic, the world around them becomes theirs to command. Founded by the mage knight Gunduik Xenos, she was the first to be titled Skybreaker after she defended her kingdom from a dragon attack with spear and magic. This unique fighting style focuses on the manipulation of gravity with objects and creatures. allows them to fly. It allows them to have creatures fall the wrong direction. It is just a lot of fun. You can't do much more magic than that, but it's all the magic you need.
Yeah.
So definitely our winner today is Patricia Solano 37. Congratulations. Woo! Definitely let us know what you think about it. If you didn't win, no problem. You can head on over to critacademy.com and subscribe to our newsletter for your chance to win. That's it. Also, when you sign up in our newsletter, you also get our best selling challenge accepted free. You sign up, that's it. You're guaranteed to get free loot, and you might get more free loot because once you're in there, I constantly am rolling on that list. So, all right. Last week we did have several giveaways, for people watching the streams. We have 2 winners for the Rescue on Griffin Crag Pass by Chad Lynch. From YouTube, we have Darth Juyo. If I'm saying that wrong, oh well. And on Twitch, it's DMK4110. Woo! Yay! Congratulations. We love giving away fat loots to all of our audience. So like, follow, subscribe, all that jazz. Before we close out, Dale, do you want to give yourself one more plug? Where people can find you, all that jazz.
Yeah. So for all you Crit Nation fans, you can just pop over to crit.inclusiverpg.com.
We'll make sure to put that link in the thing below. There's link is also on the blog too. So awesome. We're definitely. Is there somewhere they can follow you?
Yeah. You can. You can follow me. I'm Wormworks Dale on Twitter. But even better, if you go to our website, you can actually go to that same link and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get not only notified about when the Kickstarter launches and all that. We've got some extra stuff that we put out. We've got a whole bunch of combat maps and other things. And also something that is an exclusive just to our newsletter is Draconic Addiction, where we take a look at addiction, and addiction is not the same as greed. Right. And so typically you often think of dragons as greedy, but what if they're actually addicted to their loot? And so we actually use that. So we're exploring what addiction is and what it isn't. All right. Through a dragon and how would that play out with a dragon that has an addiction?
That is so cool. That is so cool.
So, but yeah, you can only get that through our newsletter. So go and sign up.
Dalcinia says already signed up for the newsletter. Thank you. All right. I think that'll do it for our show today. Ian, you want to help close us out?
If you enjoy the show and you want to support us, visit us at critacademy.com. Follow us on social media, and please leave a review.
As a reminder, if you're not following us on social media, we are currently doing a 10K goal. We're trying to hit 10K before the end of the goal on or the end of the year on our YouTube channel. What? YouTube subscribers, 10K by the end of the year. And we will pay, if we achieve that goal, we will give one lucky person a free copy of all of our digital content, which is a lot of content. I think there's at least 27 plus pieces of content at least. So please help us get that, share it, like it, all that jazz. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your guest, Dale.
And I'm your co-host, Ian. Thanks for listening.
Keep your blades sharp and spells prepared, heroes. We'll see you all later. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye.